Hello, I'm Bob Schieffer, and welcome to the CBS Evening News Online edition. Just ahead, Vice President Cheney finally talks about the Texas hunting accident, but how is he coping with it all? Gloria Borger talked with some of those closest to him, and we'll have a report. Also under fire, facing a grilling on Capitol Hill, Homeland Security Chief Michael Chertoff tries to defend his handling of the Katrina disaster. And Congress severely criticized American internet companies that accepted censorship from the Chinese. Sandra Hughes has details on that. It's all starting now on the CBS Evening News Online edition. Well, he called it one of the worst days of his life. That is how the vice president described the day he fired his shotgun and then watched in horror as his friend fell to the ground. After 4 days of silence, the vice president finally spoke publicly about the hunting accident that left his friend Harry Whittington wounded and still in the hospital. I want to turn now to Gloria Borger, who broke the story last night of how the way all this was handled has created a real divide between the president's people and the vice president's staff. Gloria, we heard the vice president describe this as one of the worst moments in his life. How is he holding up? He, after all, is not in the greatest of health.
Well, Bob, one source who's very close to the vice president told CBS News today that Dick Cheney has been in what he calls a state of meltdown over this hunting accident. And another top White House aide also told CBS, quote, "You can't imagine how upset the vice president is." In fact, he said the vice president is so upset that the Whittington family is worrying about Dick Cheney.
Very interesting. Well, let me ask you about this whole business. While the vice president said he's really sorry, and clearly the man is touched, as we saw in that interview, this whole idea of what a political problem it's become, he says he still thinks he did the right thing by more or less keeping it a secret for a while.
Well, Bob, there aren't a lot of people who would agree with the vice president on that. I spoke with Ari Fleischer, who is the former White House press secretary. He reminded me of a situation back in 2002 when the president was at home in the residence on a Sunday afternoon watching some football, and he almost choked on a pretzel. Now, of course, Bob, this situation is so much more difficult. They're not really comparable, but the White House press corps heard about it very, very quickly, and then the president himself came out and spoke with reporters directly to defuse the situation. Here's what the president said at the time.
Woke up and there was Barney and Spot showing a lot of concern. I didn't realize what happened until I looked in the mirror. My glasses cut my side of my face, but I feel great.
Put an end to that story, Bob, and people are shaking their heads wondering why the vice president just didn't come out and speak sooner.
Well, you did the story yesterday about the divide between the president's staff and the vice president's staff. Now, is there any indication that there's anything that has come between the president and the vice president? Has this had any effect on their relationship?
Bob, I was asking that question all day today, and what I can tell you is that I spoke with a top White House aide who said to me, quote, "You are creating an artificial distinction between them, and there is none." End of story, he said.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Will. While the White House was dealing with all of that, the Secretary of Homeland Security was having an even worse day on Capitol Hill. At a hearing on the government's response to Hurricane Katrina, Michael Chertoff was getting beaten up by senators from both parties, one of them saying the disaster workers ran around like Keystone cops. Here is our Capitol Hill correspondent Cheryl Atkinson with that.
1 year to the day after he was sworn in as Homeland Security Chief, Michael Chertoff took the oath again.
I do.
But this time before senators ready to grill him about his leadership failures in the Katrina disaster. But before anyone really got down to business, watch the man standing up behind Chertoff.
Sir, this is not a public hearing today.
This is not American. They're being evicted.
Senators were only a bit more sedate, methodically challenging Chertoff on his mindset before, during, and after Katrina's landfall, like why he went to a bird flu conference the day after Katrina hit.
Now, avian flu is an important potential threat, but Katrina was an immediate crisis. I just don't understand why you didn't cancel those plans, return immediately to the Emergency Operations Center, and take control.
There is never a moment that I am not within a hand's reach of a secure telephone, a secure fax, and literally what I have in my office.
Yet things did fall through the cracks. Democrats and Republicans said Chertoff should have and could have known about the levee break sooner. This email is proof that the Coast Guard, for one, reported the breaks directly to Chertoff's department the day before Chertoff says he knew.
How did these screw-ups happen? I mean, have you looked into them?
Yes, the answer is I have looked into them.
And how did they happen?
I think it's a combination. Some of these messages never got to the operations center. Some of them did, but there were conflicting stories.
Chertoff was also criticized in a scathing report issued on the House side today, and it was Republican Tom Davis who lambasted the White House.
I think the White House attitude is that they were monitoring this and they were disengaged, and this was Homeland Security's responsibility. I think that's a cop-out to a great extent.
Davis says that although his committee's formal Katrina investigation is over, it will still be pursuing more information from the White House. Bob?
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Officials of 4 of this country's biggest and richest internet companies, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, and Cisco, were called into Congress today and criticized for going along with censorship in China as the price of doing business there. Sandra Hughes has our report.
Lawmakers pushed America's internet darlings up against an uncomfortable wall, starting with a spokesman for search giant Google.
Can you say in English that you are ashamed of what you and your company and the other companies have done?
I don't think it's fair to say that we're ashamed of what we've done.
Congressman Christopher Smith went even further, likening the 4 companies' cooperation with China to helping Nazi Germany.
If the secret police a half-century ago asked where Anne Frank was hiding, would the correct answer be to hand over the information?
Yahoo officials admit to handing over information that sent Chinese dissidents to prison.
Ultimately, American companies face a choice: comply with Chinese laws or leave.
But the incentives to stay are enormous. Huge money from a huge population. More than 110 million Chinese internet users and growing. But help for the Chinese web surfers may be on the way.
It's all about freedom of speech, and it's all about freedom of learning.
28-year-old computer programmer Roger Dingledine is doing what the big internet companies are not. He created an anonymous web browser called Tor. It allows Chinese computer users to access websites without anyone knowing, not even the Chinese secret police.
So there are tens of thousands of people in China right now who are using Tor because it's one of the tools that are available for them to be able to get around the firewall.
There are other underground web-inspired ways to get around the Great Firewall of China. Everything from online free speech sites to everyday folks who adopt a blog so Chinese computer users can make use of their uncensored servers.
Apparently, China is feeling the pressure, too. In a rare move, the government tried to publicly defend its internet controls, something American internet companies had a hard time doing.
In an imperfect world, we had to make an imperfect choice.
A choice no one seems willing to go back on. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
More stories are just a click away, but don't forget to join me on television for the on-air edition of the CBS Evening News. On Thursday's broadcast, after getting treatment for breast cancer, does a woman still need to see a specialist for a follow-up and care? We'll have the surprising results of a major new study. For CBSNews.com, I'm Bob Schieffer.